Alright guys, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining in. My name is Pratik Agarwal. I'm from Ivy Professional School. So today what we're going to be starting with is, or what we're going to be discussing is database functions and how it is used, how they are used in MS Excel. I expect that people know the basics of Excel in order to be able to attend this workshop. So I would assume that you guys know know how to work with conditional functions like sum ifs, average ifs, and so count ifs, and so on and so forth. So I would assume that you already know that. Okay. So all right, let me get started. So this is our agenda for today's database function webinar. First, we are going to discuss as to what exactly is the need of database functions in Excel and how they are used and so on and so forth. Then we will discuss what is the advantage of using database function over other conditional functions like sum ifs, count ifs, and so on and so forth. Then we will discuss the types of database functions available and how they work. And then I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and then I'm going to summarize very quickly. So this is going to be a very short webinar. All right. And do not forget, by the way, guys, to like our YouTube channel for other Excel tips and other analytical tutorials which are absolutely free for you to download or to view. And also go ahead and like our Facebook page, because we keep giving job alerts, we keep giving very good articles, interview questions for analytics. All right. So let's first discuss what exactly is the need of database functions. You see, if you have worked with conditional functions like count if, sum if, average if, basically using certain condition you are writing, you're summing up, or you're finding the average, or you're finding the count from a data set. You would have realized that using sum ifs you can only apply multiple and conditions. Okay, or count ifs, again you can apply only multiple and conditions. There is no option of applying a combination of and or condition. Okay, whereas what database function allow you to do is it allows you to do a combination of and or conditions. Okay, unlike the conditional functions like sum ifs or average if or count ifs and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's where it sets that's what sets apart the database function from conditional functions. Okay, now there are a variety of database functions which are available. The common ones are dsum, which will give you the sum, or which will add the data based on set criteria. Average, which will give you the average of a column from the database based on certain condition. Max, which will give you the max of a column in a database based on again some conditions. Min will again give you the minimum. Decount will give you the count of numeric values in a column in a database based on condition. Decount A will give you the number of blank cells in a column based on set criteria. Dget will give you, dget is something which is unique about database function. It will give you a single field data. Okay, it will give you a single fields data based on the condition that you are specifying. Okay, I'm going to give you examples of that so that it will become clearer. Standard deviation or devariance. Okay, to get statistical information out of the data. All right, so I'm going to use a simple data set which I have here for you guys. Hope everyone can see the entire screen, right from column A to column H, right? If someone can verify that they're able to see the entire screen. Yeah? All right, good. So, all right, good, thank you. All right, so here, if you look at this data, what do we have? In this data, we have building, city, year, stories, meters, building type, and decade. Okay, these are the main fields of this data. Okay, and basically variety of different buildings are there, in which city they are located, which year it was a particular building was constructed, the number of stories that are there in a building, the height in meters, the type of building, whether it is a large building, normal building, or a very large building. All right, and also the decade that it was constructed in. So this is the information that is given in this data sheet. Okay, so this entire data sheet, okay, the entire data sheet from here all the way till end will be our source database that we are going to use in database functions. Okay, Now, what I'm going to do is, for our convenience, okay, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to simply copy this entire table, and I'm going to give a name to this entire table called as, I will give it as building underscore database. Okay, this is the name that I'm giving to the entire table with all the data. And also, remember, I have selected the fields as well. Okay, so do not forget to select the fields as well. So including the fields, including the data set, I've given the entire thing as, what is the name of the table I've given? The name of the table I've given as building underscore database. All right, because I intend to use it very often in the various different database functions that we're going to do. Now, step number 1 in creating the database function is to create the criteria or to create the condition set. Okay, now, very similar to advanced filtering condition set. If you have worked with advanced filtering, even if you have not worked, I'm going to explain this to you. To set the condition or condition set for database function, you have two options. Either you can work with and conditions, or you can work with or condition, or you can work with a combination of and or. Okay, in fact, so there are 3 types of conditions that you can create. So again, it's a very flexible, as I said, one of the main advantage of using database function is that it allows you to work with combination of and as well as or, whereas conditional function like count ifs or average ifs allows you to work with only and conditions. Okay, so that's the main difference between database function and other conditional functions. So as I said, the first step is to set up the criteria. Now, here, if you think that you'll be working with only and, right, then you have to write the fields in the first row of the criteria table, and you have to write the data of the criteria table in the second row. If you have written multiple fields, like here there are multiple fields, and if you have provided multiple values of the data set in the same row, that means you're trying to create an AND scenario. What is the condition that I'm trying to create here is, I'm trying to say that city is equal to New York and year should be greater than 1920 and number of stories should be greater than 50. That is the condition that I've created here. So if I were to write the condition here, okay, if I were to write the condition here, then the condition would, for this table, would look like this. City is equal to New York and year is greater than 1920 and stories is greater than 50. That is the overall condition in English statement. If I were to write, then this would be like this. Okay, whereas if I am working, if I want the conditions to be or, that means if I want multiple or condition, then I would write them across different rows. Here I was writing the condition in the same row, and here I am going to write the condition across different rows. How? Say for example, if my condition is city is equal to New York and stories is greater than 50, or city is equal to Chicago. So if in plain English, if I were to write this condition, I'm just going to delete this. So then it would look like this. City is equal to New York and stories is greater than 50, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to include this set of condition under brackets, because this is one part of condition, and then or city is equal to Chicago. This is in plain English is what I'm writing here. So either this set of conditions should be true or this condition should be true. Okay, that's the main difference, okay, between simple and or combined with some and statements. So why is this so? Because you see, in the same row it will be and across different rows it will be or. Okay, now, so that is what the first thing is, to set up the condition. Once the condition is set up based on the question that you have, then you will go ahead and choose the right database function from the list of database functions that we saw, and then you will write that. Now, what is the syntax of a database function? The syntax of a database function is, suppose this is the function that we are going to be using, daverage. Suppose, if our question is, find the average number of stories in New York average number of stories in New York. So what would be the condition that we want to set? If my question is find the average number of stories in New York, what is the condition that I want to set? I want the city is equal to New York. I don't want any of these other fields. So I'm going to go ahead and delete them. Only city is equal to New York. There is only one condition here. City is equal to New York, right? And what is the syntax of the database function? We are looking for average, right? So we are obviously going to use d-average. D-average, the syntax is the database. The first argument in the function is the database, the source database. So in our case, we have named it as building underscore database. So that is what we are going to select. The second is the field name. In our case, it is stories. So stories is given. Third is criteria field, right? Or criteria. So in here, this is what I will select. So let me do it for you. Say I'm going to write d-average. Okay, I'm going to select this, right? Now, if you look at the syntax here, I'm just going to put it here just so it is clearly visible. What is the first argument? The database. What is the database? If you remember, I have named the database. So my name database is coming here. So I'm going to select that. So this entire database is now selected. Comma. What is my field here? My field here is stories. So instead of writing, if I were to write stories, then I have to write stories in double quotes. Okay. Or what I can do is the foolproof, the better mechanism is I select stories from here, right? Comma. Look here. Comma. What is the third argument? The third argument is the criteria set. Now where is the criteria set? My criteria set is here. What is my criteria set? City. I am selecting the field as well as I am selecting the value from the criteria set. Okay, so city is equal to New York, right? So since there is only one criteria, so I am not even bothered whether it is and or right? It is just one criteria. And then my function is now ready. Alright? And I write it and it gives me the answer as this. Okay? So if you want, you could have rounded it up as well. Alright? Now, let's look at this particular question. The question number B is, count the total number of buildings in New York and Chicago. Count the total number of buildings in New York and Chicago. So now, what is the condition that we want to set? The condition is that city should be equal to New York and city should be equal to Chicago. So if there are two AND conditions using the same field, then I have to create them in the same row, because there is an AND condition, so we have to do it in the same row. So city is equal to New York and city is equal to Chicago. So I've got city, New York and city, Chicago in the same row. I'll not put in different rows, because if I put in different rows, then it will do an OR between them, right? So now here the formula that I'm going to use, since it is counting the number of buildings, okay, number of buildings, which is a text value that we are counting. So we will do dCount A, which counts the non-blank cells in the field of records in the database that matches the condition that you specify, right? So dCount A, and what is my, again I'm going to bring this thing little up here so that it becomes little visible, okay, or I'll bring it here, okay, so that it is visible. So dCount A, what is my database? My database, again, building underscore database. My field name here is, on which I'm going to apply the count function, is the building. And what is my criteria set? My criteria set is city is equal to New York and city is equal to Chicago, right? If I run this, what will be the output? The output here I'm going to get is 0. Why? Why am I getting output as 0? The reason why I'm getting the output as 0 here is that, you see, I have mentioned what this query has been written in such a way that it says count the total number of buildings in New York and Chicago. Now the same building, if you look at the data, there is no single building which is in the same, I mean, which is there in city as well as, which is there in Chicago as well as New York, and that is why the result is coming as 0. If the query was, give me the total number of buildings in New York or Chicago, right? Then I would have written in such a way. Then instead of writing city is equal to New York and Chicago in the same row, then what I would have done is I would have written the condition like this: city is equal to New York or city is equal to Chicago, right? So now I'm going to go, and now if you notice what is happening is here my criteria set would change. This will be my criteria set, right? And I press enter and there you go. So you got 23 as the answer. That means, what does it mean? That there are total 23 buildings in New York or Chicago total. Between New York and Chicago there are 23 buildings. 23. The total count of buildings is 23. Is this making sense? Now let's do one more query. The question is, find which building in New York has stories between 50 and 55. Find which building in New York City has stories between 50 and 55. Now what is the condition here? My condition is that New York City and the stories should be between 50 and 55. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the condition like this: greater than 50, greater than equal to 50 and less than equal to 55, because it says between 50 and 55, right? So now my condition is set. Okay. In fact, this is not an or condition. This is a table. Okay. So this is where my AND condition is set. Since they are in the same line, so they all will be ANDed together, right? So then again the function that I want to use here is find which building. So it is looking for specific building, right? Now here, if you remember when I was discussing this, I told you that there is a function called as dgate which returns a single field of data, specific field of data from a column of a database that matches the condition that you specify. So here this is what we are going to be using. We are going to be using dget because we are looking for one specific result. So dget, okay, which extracts from database a single record that matches the condition you specify, and the equation is, sorry, the arguments are very similar to the argument that we saw in other, sorry, that dgate, and my database is again building database, and my second field which is field, right, which is field. So what is the field here? Which building, right? So I'm going to select this A3, and what is my criteria set? My criteria set is including the fields here, right? Clear? So it gives me equitable tower. If I go here, if I look for equitable tower, so that's where you see between 50 and 55 only one building is there in New York City, right? So that's what it gives you the return, as an output. No, right? It will give you the first one. If there are two buildings, it will give you the first one. Okay, whichever one it finds. Exactly. Not header. It's not a header. It's not giving you the header. It is giving you the name of the building, right? So it will find if there are, yeah. So the question is, if there are multiple buildings in the same criteria set, then it will give you the whichever one it finds first. Yeah. The condition that, I mean, the buildings which are meeting the condition, then whichever one it is finding the first is what will be shown in here. Okay, clear? Now, suppose if I make a little more complicated condition here, okay, a little more combination of and or condition. Say for example, if my question is find or uh, count the number of buildings in New York or Chicago, having height greater than 300 meters. Okay. Sorry, let me show you the entire query. So if this is my question, count the number of buildings in New York or Chicago having height greater than 300 meters. Okay. Height greater than 300 meters. So my answer here would be, so I'm going to use which function? Decount A, right? My building database is building database. My criteria field here, my field is the building. So I'm looking for this, and my criteria here is what? The third field is criteria. So my criteria here is, actually one mistake. We have not set up the criteria yet. So let's set up the criteria. Criteria is cities go to New York or cities go to Chicago, and the height, the meter, right? Because if you remember, we have meters column here. Right? And what is the condition? The condition is that height should be greater than 300. Right? In both the cases. In both the cases, it should be greater than 300. Now, so I'll write decount A, my building database. My field is building, which is A3. You could have named the field as well if you wanted. And my criteria here is this set. Okay. And it gives me 7. So that means there are total 7 buildings across New York or Chicago which have height more than 300 meters. Okay. So this is how we use database function. Very quickly, very in a very short manner. If you want to understand how database functions are used using multiple combination of conditions, so then this is how you can do it. Okay. Any questions from the people who are attending the webinar online? Any question as to how database was used? Now, to quickly summarize, you can again ask question. I'll allow you to ask question again. So first, what are the advantages of using database function? The first advantage is that it allows you to create a combination of and or condition. Unlike the condition functions, which allows you to create a combination of only and conditions. Okay, so it gives you more flexibility to work with your data set. Okay, you can add, you can compute, you can do a lot of things because there are 11 different types of database functions which are available. Okay, you can infer statistical output out of that, or you can do basic computation as well. Okay, so that's one of the basic advantages of using database functions over the normal condition functions. Plus, it has a very unique function called as dget, which allows you to specifically get one field of data from the database based on the condition that you're specifying. Okay, and to create the condition, for step number 1 in database function is first you have to set up the condition. To create the condition, if you have to write the column headers, and then just below that you have to write the data sets as well, the value sets as well. If you write the value sets and the column headers in the same row, then you're ANDing the condition. Like here, the condition that we have ANDed is cities go to New York and year is greater than 1920. We had deleted the year from here, but you could have had the year, right? Cities go to greater than 1920, right? So then this is giving you cities go to New York, year greater than 1920, and stories greater than equal to 50 here, right? Since everything is in one row, so it is giving you AND. If you want or in the condition, then you would be writing across different rows. So this condition here means what? That cities go to New York and meters greater than 300, or cities go to Chicago, and meters greater than 300. Okay, so you can use condition like this, right? You can set up the condition like this. Once the conditions are set, then depending on the query that you want to answer, or depending on the data that you're looking for, a computation that you are trying to calculate, you would choose the right database function. And as we had discussed, the database function has 3 fields, and all those fields are mandatory fields. So first is the database. That means the data source. I had given the name to that data source, so building underscore database. So I'm just selecting the building underscore database name here. Then the second field is the field. Okay, the field that you want to extract. Always, as a best practice, select the field instead of writing the field in text. And the third is your criteria itself. Okay, the criteria, and that's where the criteria that you would have created, and you would accordingly select the criteria set. Okay, and then press enter, and your database function is ready. So this is how simple it is to use database function. All right, guys. So any question from the people who are present online? Any questions? All right, good. Guys, if there are no questions, then I'll finish up this session. Remember to like our YouTube channel so that you can get the video recording of this session, as well as you could get the video recording of other Excel tips webinars that we have conducted over the months, and you can also get other analytics tutorial free videos as well. This is our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ivproschool. Okay, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll write it again. youtube.com/ivproschool. Okay, go ahead and like it, and also don't forget to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/ivproschool. Thank you, guys. Thank you. You will be given the link to the webinar recorded on YouTube. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining in.